Hey guys, what's going on? I'm back here with another with another awesome book review, and I'll tell you, this next author is basically the grandfather, or I guess I don't know what you'd call the father of modern day fantasy. I mean, this guy. He started it all. I mean, you have your Himlin, you know, you got your Conan the Barbarian back there in the day and stuff like this, but, you know, all those guys, we haven't really got into the sci-fi things, you know, the Asmanoff and all the other guys, but I'm going to tell you, as far as modern fantasy with dragons and all these things, the buck stops with the first guy, and that is J.R.R. Tolkien. This guy single-handedly sit there and he came up with so many things that are still used today. And I mean, if you ask a lot of the fantasy writers, if you ask George R.R. Martin or even you know, Robert Jordan, I mean, things like this, these guys all go back. Even Terry Brooks. These guys all go back to this one guy that started it all. Back in the 1930s, he came out with The Hobbit. And then, about 20 years later, he came out with The Lord of the Rings. And it wiped everybody out. In fact, the year that my father was born, in 1954, was when The Lord of the Rings came out. And that was before the Silmarillion and all this other stuff. But let me tell you something. When it comes to Tolkien, people get very... you know, people get very intimidated, and I'm here to tell you, don't worry guys, I'm your average dude. I will take you through the world of Tolkien one by one as we come to the books, and I will lead you to the promised land. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. The book I'm going to be reviewing today is The Unfinished Tales by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I'm going to tell you, this one has some of my favorite short, I guess you would call them short stories in there. Once again, as Tolkien goes back and he redoes a whole bunch of things, and he takes what was intended to be a you know, a story tale, I mean, or a fairy tale of things for his child with The Hobbit. All of a sudden he goes back and retools this whole thing, and in 20 years, boom, he comes out with just endless material. That's the one thing about Tolkien, that Tolkien can put in one paragraph. J.R.R. Tolkien can fit so much information that it takes so long to digest, but the imagery and the style that he did is just you know, almost unequaled. I mean, even when Martin, George R. Martin was coming out with some of his stuff, people would say, "Oh, he's the American Tolkien," and you know, the thing about it is, George Martin was really quick to dispel those rumors, because not only was he different than Tolkien, Tolkien actually went and, you know, he was in the World War. You know, he knows, you know. World War I at least. I mean, he was out actually in the battle lines, and much like Robert Jordan, that took 2 trips, at least 2 trips to Vietnam. I mean, there's something that you can write about of someone that has actually in the military service, and especially some of the British people back in the day, the British Special Forces and things. I mean, there's big, huge, countless survival books put out by a guy that used to be in the some of those SAS books, those survival guides that you guys can find on Kindle, and some of those big, thick books. That guy used to be in the British Special Forces. So, I mean, you know, it's amazing what these guys had to go over there and what they had to witness, and for him to come back, and this is when he first started building that whole story that we all know now as the Middle Earth and Middle Earth and the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all this stuff. But now, like I said, let's get down to this Unfinished Tales, which is not really a big read. I mean, I'd say it was probably, you know, you know, about 400 or something pages, but like I said, Tolkien fits so much information in one paragraph that 400 pages is an amazing feat. But I recommend that you go out and get the Unfinished Tales. Now, before you get into the whole box set of the history of Middle-earth that came out in the 80s that Christopher Tolkien put out and stuff, the Unfinished Tales has some great stories in there. I mean, it has the history of the Kings of Numeanor, you know, what happened to that magical land and how did Sauron influence that land, and how it was a big paradise, kind of like Avalon or something in the King Arthur, you know, tales and stuff over the years. It goes into that. The whole line of Numenor kings and everything else, and what happened to Numenor, and how it was lost, and everything. I mean, this book goes into their great detail. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite things in this book, let me jump to it really quick. I mean, it has, you know, the history of Galadriel and Celeborn, and how she eventually, and it comes up with all the different variations too. It has, okay, here's the finished story, and then here's how it transferred. Christopher Tolkien does a great job of, after each one of these, telling how it came about, the different versions, and how they changed over the years, and so you really get caught up on those things that none of us were privy to beforehand, because none of it had been released until, you know, much after Tolkien's death. You know, Christopher Tolkien comes around and he's finally starting to release some of this stuff. But let me tell you, I mean, it tells the history of the Istari, you know, of the Mar, and how what we know Gandalf, who we know to be Gandalf, how that all came about, the two blue wizards that we never hear about. Then of course, you know, Rudapest, and you know, the brown, and all this stuff, and of course Saruman the white, and how this all happened. We never hear what happened to the two wizards of the blue that were never mentioned after in this book, but it's still amazing. But let me thumb through here just a second and tell you about my favorite parts. It goes through, it has different tales, you know, one tale from the first age. It has several tales during the second age, which I'll get into more when I review the Silmarillion, so that you'll know about the ages. And of course we know the third age of the ring and everything else, and of course as the Lord of the Ring ends, we're beginning the fourth age. But don't worry, I'll take you through there. I mean, it even has the friendships of Cirion and Urul, the friend of how the friendship of Gondor and Rohan first started. All that's in a part of the third age here. You know, the quest of Erebor, that was a great one. And then of course the hunt for the ring there at last. But I will tell you, of this whole thing, one of my favorite ones is the story of Aldarion and Erendis. That is awesome, about the elf and how he took several voyages into the into Middle Earth, and how he was gone for so long. And of course Erendis is sitting here waiting the whole time for them to hurry up and get married, and how this is all happening, and how that goes down. And just a marvelous tale, especially about sometimes you got to plant your roots by the shore, and regardless of what the wind throws at you, you've got to stand up and face it. It was Erendis is just an amazing story about the strength of a woman. And Aldarion, I don't know what his problem was, you know, but how that starts to go in, and how the Kings of Numenor eventually start to grow darker and darker and get away from where they should be. It's it's a wonderful story. Of all the stories in here, obviously, the ones that I think that you would like is definitely going to be Aldarion and Erendis from the Second Age, the Mariner's Wife, as Aldarion was known as the Mariner, and then the last of it's the Quest of the Ring, which a lot of you will already know. But another thing that this thing contains is the disaster of the Gladden Fields, which was the big thing about Isildur and what happened with him gaining, you know, after Sauron was defeated the last time, and he had the Ring of Power, and what happened to Isildur, and how that happened to him, and what happened to the Arendelle, and all these different things that are eventually mentioned in the Lord of the Rings. I mean, so much backstory, and so much information, which has come to be modus operandi for Tolkien. And he just kept going and going. I'm sure if he lived further, he would have kept taking it on and on. But the Gladden Fields, the Istari, and about how the Maw that they were sent in to the world of Middle Earth to help it, and how Gandalf came about that, how Gandalf got the name Gandalf instead of what he was originally called. And then of course Erendis and Aldarion and the Mariner's Wife story. All of this is worth the read. If you're a Tolkien fan, if you're a fan of fantasy at all, I mean, this is the building blocks of some of the great of one of the greatest stories ever told by the Grand Mac Daddy of fantasy himself, Tolkien. This will take you through it. I highly recommend you go and buy this and read this, along with I'll be doing a review on the Silmarillion not too long from now, but it is an amazing read. I know sometimes it's hard to get through. You have to go through a lot of the appendixes of it after each story, but it's worth the wait. Go through it, man. It's worth the painstaking effort to just go through it and really just soak it in like a sponge, because it's great. This is wonderful reading. So guys, go out, or go out to your local bookstore, or even go on Kindle and get this, The Unfinished Tales of J.R.R. Tolkien. It is more than worth it. From my bookshelf to yours, happy reading.